let me ask, how many of you can do, a little earlier than this, or what is the earliest that we can do? I said, if we could get somebody to do us a tour at 5 o'clock. I'm not expecting everybody, but, could we get teams of 3 to 5 to go? Do you think, is 5 too early, is 6 better? How's
Between
5
now
o'clock?
and the end of school?
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
I'll take video for you.
Well, maybe that's not a bad idea.
I mean,
Maybe that's the solution.
is there any,
Would people be okay with that?
Say that,
If we did a video, if 2 or 3 of us did the visit, and then we brought back the videos of each of the visits?
one of the great opportunities of those who are able to show up is to quiz whoever is giving the tour.
Absolutely.
What about this? What about
Right,
that?
right,
What
right.
about this?
Right, so we need to be kind of organized before we go in. I wasn't here at the last meeting, so I apologize. But one of the questions I have, and I'm not sure if we're going to get into it tonight, is do we have a punch list of priorities?
So that's partly what we're going to be talking about when we talk about this rubric, absolutely, and setting our priorities around that. But let me get back to the time a little bit. So if we did an evening tour, could people do a 6 o'clock?
I can arrange to go anytime with advance notice.
Was it advance
Right.
notice?
Same with me.
Basically.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we know 2 weeks ahead, then I can show up at 4 for that.
Okay, all right. We'll look at between roughly around 6 and then see if we can get some of these in there. So kind of going back to Jody's data around the schools that are comparisons, I didn't have my notes in front of me, so I apologize if I got them wrong, but I think these are 5 schools that are all within the last, I think Algonquin is the oldest, and I don't think under MSBA, but I think actually Hudson is not under MSBA either. But it is one of the model schools. It was voted afterwards. So, but are these the 5 schools, Jody, that you think and would recommend us to go visit based on comps to?
I don't remember any of it.
Okay.
It's been,
Are they
and I
all
didn't bring it, I'm
rebuilds?
sorry.
Okay.
Are they all new builds or are they renovations?
Algonquin is around. All the others are brand new.
Because, okay.
Do you mean under MSBA, meaning before the regime change and how
That's right.
funding was done?
Yes.
Which was about, what, 5 years ago
Um,
or so?
Well, so there was a brief hiatus, 2003. I think they came online in 2007. So they've been operating for 6-7 years
I
now.
mean, I don't remember which
Is there a way to add another renovation onto this? Because, and the reason I ask is, are we convinced that we need to build new? If
No?
we're not, then we just in due diligence, I think we need to have another reno on there.
Let me get the site open. Let me see if there is another reno.
Because it would be interesting
Yeah.
to see what their punch list of priorities was,
Mm-hmm.
and then how the old school kind of morphed into.
Do you happen to know if that was really renovation or a renovation in addition? Or
It was renovation and addition. Yeah.
But I think just to be,
So,
Well, Wachusett was a reno and addition as well. So that might be a school.
Tewksbury was the other one.
Tewksbury's brand new.
I'm looking at Neshoba that I did the
Right.
data for. Neshoba, Natick, Shrewsbury, Tewksbury, Whitman Hanson, Hudson.
Okay. And Whitman Hanson is brand new. So Wachusett and Algonquin are the only 2 that I know of that are renos, ad renos since in this century.
And they were, Algonquin must have been a huge renovation, because they were at $850 and they're now at like almost $1250.
think we could add them,
Sure.
what you said? Because when we're asked, I want to be able to say,
Yeah.
kind of compared some.
Dunstable?
Oh, here.
I'm looking at another thing that I pulled.
Ron Dunstable was brand new. They moved location, yeah. So they used to be on 119, now they're practically in New Hampshire.
Hopkinton? Westford? Westford hasn't.
Westford, did they do a whole new high school? They did something big in the last 8 or 9 years.
That's not a brand-new high school.
No.
Oh, wait, Westford, I'm thinking Westboro.
Something Academy, as they call
Westford.
themselves.
Westford Academy?
Yeah. So it could be, I'm thinking Westboro.
Yeah.
Got it.
I was doing the same.
Westboro is a reno, I think.
Yeah, you wouldn't even know it to go in there. I mean, it's nice and it's bigger,
Yeah.
but it doesn't feel like it's a fairly new school.
Yeah,
I've
I
been
don't-
there a couple of times in the
I'd
last
have to
few
call and
years.
ask, because I don't think it's been very recent.
No, I'm looking at my other list where I just had scores, so it must, I think Westford Academy must be the other one.
Okay.
But you're thinking that was a new build?
I don't know, I'd have to investigate that.
I know we already put it on the list, but I did want to point out that what you said is a good model for us too, because it's comprehensive as a high school.
Oh.
So they have a lot of facilities that maybe a conventional, traditional high school would not have.
Such as,
They have a preschool space. They have a textile space, like for clothing design. They have
oh boy.
a maker space. I mean, obviously.
No, I
we
mean,
need to
oh
make
boy, good.
Yeah, we
Oh
need to
boy,
make our
very
list of
good.
priorities, and they have a wonderful music wing because their music program is very renowned.
Okay, let's go look at what you
Yeah,
said.
we should. Really, it's a great model,
I'm
I
with
think,
you.
of our comprehensive.
The per pupil cost, is it, do we, and I know I'm asking a lot of questions, but I just want to feel like when someone asks me, I can be fair in my response. If the per pupil cost, if we don't know it right now, that's fine, but we should at least, one of these line items should compare.
Oh, I'll put a different document together around the comps, the existing sort of technical comps.
Because I think that's going to come into play when we're,
I mean, if we want to do that a little bit,
So I might be able to find it.
what might be better for us is to, DOE does something called, has a website called DART. And it provides us with comparison bands based, and already does the analysis to compare to make the comparison.
What are
and
your
decides
comparisons?
that you compare to these
Oh, excellent.
schools. So let me bring up those schools and tell you what they are, and then maybe those are schools we want to go and look at. And they do it by schools as well as by districts. So you can actually look at Neshoba Regional High School as compared to another high school.
outside of the district.
Right, and they are sometimes different. The
Yeah.
district comps are different than the high school comps.
I think that's good.
And it's not opening, but it will, I'm sure.
Because if we're going to make a recommendation on a large spend, I want to make sure that we're trying to be reasonable about.
I don't know why, but for some reason, no, they were. I'll take a textiles one. Yeah,
I'll
textiles
take
sounds very interesting.
music wing.
It's
Algonquin's got a
really, I mean, it's a
beautiful-
double in size, obviously, from us, so they
Our
can probably do
program,
more,
music
but,
program.
but it's just something, I think, as a model that
What's the population there?
their school population is 2,000 instead of
2,000.
1,000. It's, the 5 districts, the 5 towns, excuse me.
They have a pool, don't they?
No,
I know, we're not gonna go there,
I
but-
didn't see the pool, I'm not sure, but they do have a wonderful field house attached to the school. So-
towns they are?
Yeah, Princeton, Sterling, Holden,
Rutland.
Rutland, and what's the fifth
Princeton,
one?
Sterling, Holden, Rutland. Oh, and there's one more.
I think it's I want to say it's a funny name, but I just can't remember the name.
Okay.
I'm not there, but it's somewhere in that area, obviously.
Thank you.
They're contiguous.
Yeah.
So here are the comparison high schools. Winchester High School, which is right now undergoing a building project, they're just about to bid. Wilmington High, which I don't know its status, but I think they
The
just.
town meeting just approved something, so I think they've actually started doing stuff, actually
Okay.
work up in Wilmington.
Okay.
So,
I was gonna say, how do you?
Wakefield Memorial High School, Sharon High School, Scituate,
Situate. Sorry.
I'm an out-of-stater, I say, pronounce it the way I say
Pronounce
it.
all the letters.
Newburyport High School and Lexington High School King Philip Regional High School, Duxbury High School, and Chelmsford High School.
Duxbury, I mean, Chelmsford must be huge. How big is Chelmsford High School?
Chelmsford, it does have to be huge.
Does it say the population in that comparison? Sometimes it does,
it
depending on what
does,
you're
yeah.
looking at. But that's an old building from.
So Lexington's the largest at 2,000, Chelmsford is 1,500, almost 1,600. Sharon is probably Duxbury is the closest at 1037. Sharon has a similar 1142. Winchester's 1150.
But those schools aren't all renovated, they're just comparables, correct?
Those are all the comps. I think out of that group, I think Newburyport High School just is either a reno and or a new, and that's the only one I know for sure. And I have to go investigate the others to be sure.
And this is what website?
It's called DART. It's off of doe.mass.edu, and it's on the left-hand column. It's their software to look at all kinds of different comparisons data.
So realistically, I mean, I guess particularly if we're talking about now to the end of the school year, which has a finite amount of time, how many, and I'm assuming, I don't know how many would do in a day, or be like one, visit per school per day, but depending on how many schools you go see, it kind of
Right.
adds up,
Right.
kind of quite
But
quickly.
my thought was that if we created a good enough rubric or a device that we're going to, do the questions and do the investigation of the view of the school, we could be in teams. So, if we each did one, if we had 4 teams, let's say we decided 4 schools, we have 4 teams, and then, we're there. And especially if we could get permission to video, and then we could just bring James along with us and video the whole thing,
Every time.
every time.
Do you get paid for this? Yeah. Okay, let's bring it.
There we go. So that was my thought, is that we wouldn't all go together, but we'd break off in teams, because it just...
And just have a similar list of,
Right, we'd have a sheet that we would use, and we would have, maybe go around the room if you have a particular bent towards types of questions that need to be asked, or you do, we get them all down and make sure we ask them and include them in the document. Does that make sense? And we started a little bit of that the last time, at our last meeting. We have some, questions, such as what are the comprehensive offerings? What are the programmatic needs? What is the population we need to serve? So we have a few of those to start with that I've included somewhat in here too. So this document that I've given us is, I was thinking that to make it easier, we just have yes or no answers. So there's sort of this before construction conversation that we could have, and then the after construction conversation. How does it improve things to get the return on investment answer?
and these are all items that we've all identified.
We haven't agreed to them. I've just jotted them down from notes that I've had from the meetings
That's
that
what
we've
I
had.
meant, right. I wonder if we hone the list, if we could front the visits to the administration with the
Sure.
list and say, these are the things, just to help
Yeah.
them get prepared.
I think that's a definite idea. And give the list of questions too.
Plus the open-ended, what else do you guys, to your administration, notice about the change?
Absolutely.
And I think collaborative workspace.
Collaboration space.
For students or for teachers?
So why don't we go through this list and see if they make sense, or we want to, and I'm not married to it, and I'm not, so give me your honest answers, politely, of course. And we'll go through it and make it our own. It's not really a rubric, I don't know why I call it a rubric. So, I was thinking at the time when I was designing this over the weekend of this sort of before construction thought process, thinking that, you know, it would be nice to see if they were in the same kind of spot we are before, construction.
Yeah.
So I just listed out things that I know are issues that we have. Maybe there's others we could add there.
Could we add,
Go ahead, no, you go ahead.
could we add something maybe about, I don't know where it would fall in these two, but something about, do they have the teachers travel? Like, was that one of the
Yeah.
space considerations?
Teachers, you mean on cards?
Just, was that sort of built into the plan, or did they plan around teachers?
And some of that is not a bad thing.
Right,
right?
yeah.
I mean, the degree we have it isn't optimal, but some of it's not a bad thing, I would think.
There are some Wachusett teachers travel for the most part. I was there like a month ago.
And there's sort of a new design model where all
Yeah.
teachers travel.
Right, and you have a big collaborative space, a big
Yeah.
department office where the kids know where to find the teachers and things like
I
that.
kind of like that.
It is a more, I think it's becoming a more common model. I'm not sure.
It is, I think it works well in some cases and not so well in other cases where they have a lot of materials that they need for different classes.
Yeah.
Looking at
For
our-
example,
So it'd be
science
selective.
teachers
Yeah.
probably wouldn't
Right,
want to
science,
travel.
yeah.
So-
Not could
so-
travel safely.
So that's because from, what I want to, while we're doing this, I want to make a list too of what are our specific issues that, the reason you're building a new school isn't because you're getting 200 new kids. The reason you're building or renovating a new school is because you lack space and appropriate space for specific types of activities,
Yeah.
both for now and 5 and 10 years from now. And that's what I want to, I want to be able to answer those questions because they're going to come up. Why are you doing it? Not because we have more students, because more specific and tactical than that.
Yeah.
So,
Others?
I was thinking too, something, did the schools kind of prioritize the need for flexible classroom space? Like we're talking about building and co-teaching, which needs an element of flexibility that our small classrooms don't necessarily afford.
and what types of, can you just educate me on?
Yeah, I mean, it can be either classrooms where you can sort of open up to so that you have a larger space so that if it's co-taught, you can still have more students in there. Potentially even just the furniture choices or even the space configuration allow for sort of groupings on different sides of
Yeah.
the room so that, students can get more individualized attention within still the realm of the classroom. Are two things that come to mind.
And Michael, you have technology infrastructure was needed.
Right.
I'm wondering if that answers the question for things like, computer science programming, foreign language labs.
Mm-hmm.
Is that lost under the term infrastructure?
Nope,
Or
no,
does
no, that's more of the backbone, building the network kind of thing. So so did you need foreign language labs? Okay. What else?
I don't know what the category would be, but I know last time we'd spent some time talking about STEM and kind of wanting to do more in that arena. I'm not sure how that exactly fits into the before construction category, but it seems like it was discussed a lot.
Yeah.
And I guess I would be curious as to how their comprehensive programming was impacted. It might have declined, maybe that was a decision they made going into it. It might have increased, it may have stayed the same.
So after construction?
Maybe going into it.
Going into
Was it a
Maybe
goal?
they cannibalized space that they would have used for comprehensive because they just needed the classrooms, for
Yeah.
example, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Or, like what you said, they deliberately added space into their music area, planning to enhance that.
Is the, and to that point, on our list, is the theater space was needed, is that separate from the music arts? Because we
It's separate when I wrote that. So theater is just for theater, but
I think music, we should put that in the before construction,
okay.
because that's one of our big needs.
Yep.
Right. I mean, I think, within the arts period now,
Right.
the art room's now been divided into 2 rooms. We have used an old office to turn into the ceramics area. So with kind of the arts, the music, and theater.
So physical arts,
Okay.
fine arts.
I guess one of the things that I think, we talk about space, and space might be, you might have issues because things are laid out inefficiently, kind of whatever, but overall, my sense is that there's just not enough space, irregardless of how efficient you kind of lay out the school, but, and I don't know if this information is available, particularly before construction and after construction, kind of whatever, but almost like a square foot per pupil, not about efficiency or kind of whatever, just like how much, how much room do you have to do this stuff? And it really doesn't have to do with efficiency, it just has to do with, do you have enough room to do all the different things that the high school is supposed to do? And I have no idea how it compares to some of these things. I imagine after construction, there's a lot more room to fit in all those other things, kind of on a per pupil basis. But I think at some point, whatever kind of gets brought to the town, I think at some point you need to explain why we're, kind of, if we're not growing or kind of whatever, it's kind of, we don't have all the space to do all the things that we like or want to do. And I don't know how else to do that other than kind of, since they all vary a little bit of, I don't know how, like, if they have their square footage before construction, kind of, I don't
But
know.
even maybe they have it after, and you can say, the high schools that we like, that we're looking at, have this many square feet per pupil. And it's something to, and then you can see how many we have now, how many
Right.
square feet per pupil we have now, and then.
I would like to know from the schools that we tour, what did they not do that they would like to have done? What are they missing? What do they think they missed?
That's a good one.
So sort of regrets, almost?
Like
we
Monday
should've-
morning quarterback, like,
Yeah.
what did I, if I
Right, it's
didn't
like,
know
we
then,
thought
I know
this was a good
now.
idea, but we didn't have the budget for it, so we swapped this out, but
Yeah.
you know what? I wish we had.
But is there that much, at least for construction, is there that much of an option, or does the state kind of say, these are the plans that you can have?
The district-
Well, even then,
The district
if
can
they're
always
dictating.
fund something 100% and say, the heck with you, MSBA, we really want this, we're gonna make it happen. And MBSA says, fine, you can pay for it. Right?
So even
Isn't
as
that
part of
basically
the
the way it
overall
works?
project? Okay.
So is that a question when we go to build, were you part of MSBA or did you fund it yourself?
That's a good one too, yeah.
How many years did it take?
So you have to be part of MSBA. So the question is, did you add
You get funding?
anything above what MSBA would fund?
perhaps conversely, that you wish for some things that they would not fund and elected not to do it because of that.
Interesting.
With the space needed for the guidance department, is that covered under administrative space needed?
No, it's a separate category.
Huh, that's a good one. Parent pickup drop-off separated from buses. That's a really big one.
Huge, huge.
Someone's gonna get killed. It's probably gonna be running them over. I try really hard not to hit people in the parking lot. Ask Perry.
This now.
We have some videos of you, Corinne. We're watching.
I try to be respectful. I walk past the walkway. Perry,
Yes, that parking
you can
lot
jump in
is-
any time right
I
now.
have some
Especially in the
videos of you too,
wintertime.
Lorraine, that I burned
Oh,
to a DVD.
And you know what's as worse? It's getting out of Green Road. You know, when you have
Yeah.
Green Road exiting and
Yep.
the other exiting.
The school exit.
117 exit.
Yeah.
You know, it's a madhouse.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I think equally related is, did your district wish to have a whole new site? Well, and we couldn't do it, we failed, so we had to renovate
Yeah.
where it's kind of a town versus
Mm-hmm.
school
Right.
thing. Like, we think we can't be here, but this is what we're stuck with. I think that's a real question for the site you have, because you've obviously used up all the land for what you
Right.
could.
And that's a big issue that the town wrestles with, or the district wrestles with, in this process, is where to site it.
Right. And it's exactly what went through with Stowe
Right.
and Center School, that a lot of people said, we want a new site. Now people said, we're not going to pay for it. And so the school
Yeah.
lost out the opportunity to have a different location.
Right, if you've seen that school on weekends, there's no parking anywhere. People are parked all over the place, and if there's a renovation that takes out any more space, I'm sure it's profitable to rent that auditorium on weekends, and it's pretty heavily used.
Yeah.
It really is. Parking
You know,
everywhere.
profitable is the right word, but
Well-
it's definitely heavily used.
Income stream.
Is equipment, sound system and all that included in the theater space piece?
It can be, or do you think that needs to be a breakout?
No, I'm not saying it does.
It generally is. I mean, it's a package, so they'll look at the room and they'll say, this is what this room needs to have.
Okay,
So
okay,
it'll outfit it accordingly.
okay. What's the nurses station sports manager or whatever? How's that?
You know, that's a great question. I think they do a good job in outfitting the nurses' suite, but there's no recognition for the trainer, the space for the trainer in their list of spaces. So that is something that I would definitely want to put on somebody's radar. I don't
Because they
exactly-
just do it in that one little room, it's down a little dark hallway.
Yeah.
Scary.
Yeah, I just don't know if they have what they need.
And making do. I suspect. And then I wonder too if it's a relevant question for before construction, how much, I don't know the terms, like maintenance work, we've talked about the roof being in poor condition and kind of where if nothing's done, there's still significant maintenance, kind of
Yeah,
air quality, kind of,
capital projects that need to get done.
thank you.
Is that what you're going for?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that figures into the decision-making on doing a renovation to a school. You're looking at big upcoming capital projects and ultimately needing but in the before school, perhaps the schools had really significant capital projects they were looking at anyways, and that helped make the decision. Or maybe they didn't.
Yeah.
A couple of notes I had jotted down at a previous meeting were, and I just don't see it on here, but maybe I looked too quickly. Needed more room for the shop, like the
Mm-hmm.
industrial arts, is that what it is?
Yeah.
And also DECA
Oh, DECA.
in
Yep.
the school store.
Yep.
And also a child development program, I had written
Yeah.
those down.
Yeah.
DECA stands for,
You just talked about my wish list.
What's
I took
What's
notes.
DECA stand for? It's the business club. They do, it's after-school club, National After-School Club, we have a chapter of it.
We had 21 kids go to nationals this year.
How did they do?
They did well. They didn't have anybody place in whatever the top things were that you needed to, but they did well. I can't remember, how did they place overall as a school? Do you remember, Jim?
Pardon?
Do you remember how Neshoba placed at the DECA Nationals overall?
No, they came back and the kids were into their taking APs late, and so from a guidance perspective, I was wrapped up with how many kids we had rescheduling the APs. I apologize.
So the preschool, you said something about school store and then
I said, industrial arts,
industrial
DECA,
arts.
school store, and child development program.
What would DECA need for space, do you think? What would be the framing of that question?
Collaborative space for the kids working, which could be a classroom, but if everybody's traveling and there's not, I mean, this is,
But it's after school,
well, and,
it's not during
and
school.
we tend to work with.
I mean, we have the student store,
Definitely need a student store.
Mhm.
Very, real big need for a student store.
but DECA's after school.
But
It is, but it's,
wasn't there also a need for collaborative space during?
Oh, yeah,
school
no,
hours?
there's absolutely
Definitely.
need for
So
collaborative
I
space
don't
for
think that was
teachers
on
and for
that list. I don't
students.
think we talk about collaborative space needs or,
Right,
like
collaboration
robotics
space.
too, you know? Needs to be
some
made.
instruction.
Need
Yeah.
as a model robotics.
Do I not have it under new construction?
One of our kids got.
You had it in
an
new
offer
construction.
for a
Yeah,
robotics
okay,
scholarship.
Collaborative space created, because, yeah, presumably that wasn't on anybody's radar 50 years ago when the schools were being.
Exactly. Well, everybody thinks, after school, there's plenty of space.
So after construction, we have a couple different measurements of attendance and dropout rates and kind of whatever. At least in one of the agendas, we had a whole litany of other things in here about grades and MCAS
Well, some of
and
that's
AP
on,
and college attendance and teacher retainage and, kind of.
Yep.
So I don't know,
Some of that's in here. Dropout
And they-
rate,
maybe they get far enough down.
dropout rate, dropout rate.
Yeah, there's a couple things in there, but there was a longer list, I guess, before. that- And maybe some of that stuff's kind of more difficult to gauge, so that's why it's dropped off the list. It's-
That does make me think that, I know we're looking at this for purposes of visiting, so I wonder if at some point we separate out what we would ask for on a visit versus what we'd look up, because I think people would just speculate if we asked them
Right, that's a good
during the
point.
visit.
What,
On
for
something
like a
like-
dropout rate?
Yeah,
Yeah.
if they felt it declined, it would be, we would probably just wanna.
Yeah, because you
look that
almost
up.
want like the before and after, like
Yeah.
what was it 5 years ago and what it is today, or kind of.
We could do some of that research, is what you're saying. Yeah, I agree.
Versus asking for it, I just feel like
Yeah.
people would just be like, yeah, it happened, or, I
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah.
That's a good point.
So that way we could get almost everything you listed. A lot of that's available in the DART system, so give us a bigger picture.
And I think it's sort of the subjective question to that is, has this space led to greater engagement amongst your lower achieving students?
Mhm.
So maybe we didn't set out to do X, Y, or Z, but was there an overall impact? And that's not a measurable, but it's a very subjective piece. And, you know, maybe yes, maybe no. Because I think sometimes dropout rates vary year to year,
Mhm.
class to class,
Yep.
you know, attendance, things like that can, but often administrators can have a feel for that, and they're,
Yep.
Two other items I had on other notes would be, I think obviously included if we had built from scratch, but the lockers being an issue. But if we were renovating, I don't know how you would go about either adding more lockers or, and then I had written down faculty lounge. Do you guys not have a faculty lounge? Maybe it was brought up at one point, I don't know, I wrote it
We
down.
do have a teacher's lounge. It is about as far away from where the teachers actually work as you could possibly be in the building. So it's infrequently used. I mean, it's not convenient for teachers to use it. But we do have a lounge. It's got some tables and some couches and a fridge and a Coke machine and a sink.
You need a Keurig.
Say what?
You need a Keurig.
I don't know if we have, I don't think we have one in there.
yes,
Do we have one in the teacher's
yes,
room?
we do, the Sunshine Fund
Did they?
outfitted the room.
That was good.
Are there examples of something like that which is far away from the center of activity, in addition to just a simple teacher's lounge? Does it feel like there's any other Siberia-like thing
Well,
that?
study hall
which
now
replicate?
study hall is now in Siberia, all the way over by the auditorium. Moved it from the cafeteria. What else feels far away?
Nurses.
The athletics, I guess, a little speaking of that training space or
Mhm.
whatever, that's.
And would a teacher prep room be applicable if you guys might be moving towards having, I don't know, offices or like an English lab and then all the classrooms are off the edge? I mean, would it be redundant, I guess? Because I had also written teacher prep / resource room. But maybe if you guys were leaning towards, I don't know, is pod the right word, where you're going to have like one department here, one department there, maybe it would be redundant at that point?
Well, we do have, I don't know if this is what you mean, we have a teacher workroom
Yeah.
space for pretty much every department, which is a space where they have, not full offices, but they'll have like desks next to each other where they can go, and it's just, you know, the English teachers are in that room. In some cases, we might have a photocopier in there.
Like, do they do common planning or something where they need an area like that?
Oh, yeah, do they need an area like that? Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
But would it be redundant if we moved towards, at one point, you guys talked about having like a math wing or something, and all the teachers would have their own little either workspace or office and then classrooms around it or something like that?
I mean, that would be wonderful configuration.
I think to your point, though, we'd probably want to survey the teachers, the staff, on why they don't use the teacher's lounge, right?
Oh,
'Cause
yes.
maybe their answer would be, well, we have our workroom and that's kind of where we
Right.
spend
Right.
most of our
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah.
And that, I think, is kind of what you're speaking to is, do they overlap? Like, if they have this collaborative space, do they need another one?
I mean, you also, just from a space configuration standpoint, one thing to be careful about is having it become too departmentalized, because you also want departments being able to work with each other. But the idea of conveniently located teacher workspaces near classrooms, absolutely. Yeah.
Others to add to the list.
I'm not sure if it's relevant, but it's always interesting to hear how long it takes any town to actually get to the point of building. And what were the struggles to get there? Whether this is quite relevant to a tour, I can't really say, but
It's always important information.
It's always interesting.
Yeah. Better to know ahead of time what or as early as possible what those challenges were.
whereas it was voted down 3 times and finally in year 15, got the high school or whatever.
At least we know what commitment we've all
Right.
made.
Well, Stowe's was about 13 years.
Center
From the
school.
first-
Tennis school, yeah. In a formal way. Some
Right.
people will add some years to that, but. So it can be a long process. Right.
I would call it.
Well, we'll divide that by 3 to be optimistic.
I guess one of the things, that it's related to this, but it's not directly following the questionnaire, we had talked about trying to identify some specific needs prior to going to the visits, so that kind of having some ideas before getting influenced of going to the schools, and the, whether they're new space or foreign language labs or, what new programs, photography or whatever, kind of having some of that stuff. And it seems that may impact some of these questions, because then you kind of be interested in finding out how, like the after construction piece for some of those things would be kind of relevant.
Yeah.
So, and I think you were getting at this too at our last school committee meeting. You mentioned it, and you mentioned it a couple times here. Harry, if you had to say, what are the top 3 things that you feel the space limits where you want to go with the high school? What are they? Not to put you on the spot.
Top 3 things that limit.
Why do we need a new school? Why do we need a renovated school?
So I would one more time just think through and prioritize and think how I would pitch it. But the first thing I would say is the quality of the teaching and learning space, which I think has both real kind of tangible ramifications, things available, technology available, that sort of stuff, that can limit what teachers do. But I think also just has an impact on, and this is kind of the ephemeral, like a sense of pride, a sense of importance. I look at science labs at the building, and there's both a direct impact on the way those spaces are configured in terms of the types of instruction that happens. I think the configuration of the space limits the type of instruction that happens and the type of learning that happens. But also, it's just not, you go into that space and, we have really good science teachers. We have really smart, science-oriented kids working in a space that's really kind of a bad science space. There's just, there's the kind of the direct impact, but then there's also just this sense of, this is a really talented group of people, adults and kids, and it's just kind of a second, third grade space that they're working in. So, I would say one is just the quality of space, and that extends all over the place. That extends to band, that extends to art.
Yeah.
Science is a very tangible example. Kind of the generic English, social studies, foreign language, math classrooms are adequate, but, nothing kind of special that inspires that sense of pride and, wow, really important things happen here. So I would say quality of space, just in general, is very big. I would say right now, quantity of space is a limiting factor as well. And quantity of space, I think, plays out a lot of different ways. For example, I've already started warning the faculty that over the summer, I'm going to have to make some real tough decisions about teacher assignments to classrooms and the number of teachers who have to move around the building. And, that just limits the way a teacher can create their space, decorate their space, plan for their space. I mean, this is totally anecdotal, but we had a group of teachers, special ed teachers and math teachers who are going to be co-teaching next year, do an all-day workshop today. And one of the teachers was saying to me, we're worried about if we have to move, if everybody's moving around next year, where are we going to put all our stuff on the wall that's going to be relating back to the stuff that we learned about in our workshop today?
It's sort of like the continuing blackboard that's up on one wall all the time for a project-based class.
Yeah, it's
something
like,
that.
it's like living in a hotel room rather than living in your own apartment or condo.
Meanwhile, that wall gets seen by 5 other classes during the day that have nothing to do with their interest, and so it's not an artifact that's useful to them if it's in a migrating
And
class.
quantity of space just, it starts to have all these second, third, fourth order ramifications in terms of collaboration, teachers being able to collaborate with lots of teachers are moving around all over the place. If I have to take the math workspace in order to create an extra classroom, you just start limiting the opportunities for teachers to work together. You also limit opportunities for a teacher to take a group of 15 kids and go do something in a space that accommodates that. You start having to, I'm worried about, we're working on master schedule right now, and space is a constraint in the master schedule now, where, it might be best to offer that class this period, but I'm going to have to offer it this period because there is not a room in order to be able to do it, and so then that can have an impact on which kids are able to take that class and not able to take that class. Not in a huge way. I mean, it's not like, hundreds of kids are being denied the opportunity to take, an art class, but
Getting there.
So is an example of collaboration, if a teacher knows they own a room, it can say, we can do some ad hoc thing in this room next week because it's my room. Is that an
that could be,
example?
I was thinking more of just like actual space where teachers can come together to collaborate. So, I mean, there is a possibility, I don't know how high a possibility, but there's a possibility that the math workroom, because it's bigger than the other workrooms and might actually be big enough for me to use it for teaching space, I might have to
Might
eliminate the
take
math
it.
workroom, and then I have to find a new place, I don't know if math is, bunking up with English then, and I will do everything I can to avoid that, but you start having to make those trade-offs. Not having a teacher workroom that's centralized enough for teachers to actually use means that a lot of those kind of informal interactions, conversations that might happen, don't happen. They tend to, they happen within departments because there isn't good common space for teachers to use. And then just, things like cafeteria. I mean, I showed you that today. We have to run 4 lunches in the cafeteria because we don't have a big enough cafeteria space. And if you have to run 4 lunches, then you have to build a schedule that accommodates 4 lunches, and that eliminates different scheduling possibilities. We're talking about building a new master schedule potentially. When I say master schedule, so there's building the schedule that is the classes that students go to. The master schedule is how time is organized during the day. How many periods do you have? How long are those periods? All that sort of stuff. I have to build an overall master schedule that accommodates 4 lunches. And if you only have to accommodate 3 lunches, or if you can accommodate 2 lunches, that creates other possibilities for how you build a master schedule, how you structure the time of the day. But small cafeteria, 4 lunches, that immediately eliminates lots of different ways that you might structure time during the day.
As it stands now, is the cafeteria eating time, is that a long period for the school as a whole, and then there's this extra 15 or 20 minutes because of that?
So what ends up happening is that period is called long block. So every other period of the day is 47 minutes long. The long block, which is the lunch period, is from 11 to 12:38, so it's 98 minutes long. And so then it's blocked out into 4 22-minute periods. So if you have first lunch, you go to first lunch, and then you go to whatever 98 minus 22 is. So it's like 70-something minutes long. So it's long block because you end up having extra instructional time. And then because we have a rotating schedule, it kind of
So the
rotates
classes
through.
rotate into this long block over the course of your weekly
Correct.
schedule?
And it's not intentional,
Right.
it's random. It's every 7 days.
Right.
You're going to have long, X class is going to be in the long block. And if you have first lunch, then you've got 70 so contiguous minutes. If you have second lunch, then you have 22 minutes lunch, and then another 50 minutes, and so on. Which isn't bad. I mean, it gives you extra time, which is nice to have. But it's not built because we really believe philosophically that we want to have a longer block of instructional time. It's
Right.
built
It's
because,
an artifact of lack of something.
correct, because we need to accommodate for lunches. So quality of time, or quality of space, I'll tack on to that, far less important than amount of instructional space, but still important is amount of kind of office and small student meeting space. You know, we just hired a new, or we're about to hire a new social worker intervention position. This is someone who will work with a small group of about maybe say 10 to 15 kids who are kind of higher needs kids. I don't know where that person's going to live next year, and I don't know where they're going to be working with their kids. I might have to create some new office space from hall space, or knock down the wall and take 2 offices and turn it into 2 offices and some kind of meeting room space. So, you know, and all that kind of stuff matters, because then there are only certain places you can put it in the building, and it doesn't make sense to have it be there or not have it be there. So office space, just, again, not the most important thing in the world, but again, tends to have some of those ramifications. I mean, there are days when I'm not in my office because somebody needs to be using it for a meeting, and I need to make a phone call, and I just got to, I mean, there was a day, I think you came to meet with me one day, and we had to go borrow the psychologist's office because he happened to be off-site because all the other offices were, including mine, were being used. Not the biggest thing in the world, you know, we can meet in somebody else's office, but. So that's 2 things. I mean, the overall quality of space and how that plays out, quantity of space and how that plays out. And I'd come back to just the sense of, I think there's just a sense of pride that kids and staff, parents, community, I mean, you all said that, you know, how, you were at Mary Rowlandson, right?
Yeah.
And you were saying just walking in there, you just, you know, wow, this is a nice space. It says something about the way this community values education. It says something about the quality of education our child's going to receive. And you came to the high school and you said, whoa.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the same kind of feel. It doesn't project the same kind of. And high schools are expensive to build, and I understand why they haven't done it, but it just doesn't project the same kind of sense of pride, and this is what our community values.
Isn't that a byproduct of the work that's going to be done anyway? I mean, that is an expected byproduct, right?
What do you mean?
Pride and pride of ownership is an
Yep.
expected byproduct of the work that's going to be done. What I'm hoping we can get to is a specific list, and you started to do that, of what are those priorities when you speak to quality of teaching. And you can't have all the answers right now. I mean, it's going to be a thoughtful process, not that you haven't been thinking of it. But what, of the quality, what is it? Well, it's these specific things we need for science labs. It's these specific things we need for a shop, industrial arts, these specific things. And I don't mean down to the equipment. You can bucket that, you can
Yep.
package that up. And even the amount of space, lunchroom space, that has a ripple effect through the organization. So we,
Yep.
an office and small student, like that, those are the things I want to know about. And I don't know what the process is going forward. When are we going to get to those lists?
Getting very close, because although he's giving me the 50,000-foot view, I'm filling in the
Okay,
10,000-foot view.
because I'm getting a little impatient, as you can see, but those are the kinds of things, what Perry just said, is those are the things we need to
Well,
identify.
I mean, putting some numbers to some of those things, and some of it's probably a lot easier than other things. If the science lab space we have is X number of square feet, but it really kind of ideally would be X amount, you know, kind of, it should be, you know, whatever it is. It's 700, it should be 1,200, I don't know.
So I think our science labs were all somewhere in the 9 to 1,200 square foot range. MSBA recommended, what they budget for is 1,440. So MSBA says science labs should be pretty considerably bigger than what ours are. And looking at their numbers, the cafeteria, I don't know what our square footage is in our cafeteria right now, but they, for a school at our size, they say it would be 5,250, which I would imagine is probably 30-40% bigger than what we've got. I could be wrong, but that's.
I think the more you can kind of go through and identify
Here's what we
square
have.
footage shortages.
Yep.
And it's not pie in the sky, it's like, these are hard numbers, and it's like, you can't just all of a sudden make the cafeteria 40% bigger within your existing footprint. I mean, just, kind of, because the space has to come from somewhere, or there's an addition or renovation or new construction, just how far off are things square footage wise if you added the things that you would like to have?
Definitely the next exercise. There is actually a tool, we were talking about it today, there's a tool on the MSBA site
Yeah, I'm looking at it, I
That-
downloaded it.
will allow us to do that.
You probably also want something about programmatic
Right.
goals.
Well,
or
and,
next
you know,
5
even
years
the-
or 10 years. I don't know.
Correct, and even the lunchroom, when the lunchroom is being used for lunch, that's what its purpose is, but in other parts of the day, what could it be used for if there's, I don't know, if you have movable walls or whatever, I don't know, but, I mean, there's a lot of things, and to me, this is an overwhelming project unless you can chunk it out like that, and the stuff that Perry just spoke to is much more valuable than me sitting around thinking through, pie in the sky stuff. Like you said, programmatic, what is it that you need? Well, you need a STEM program. What does that mean? That means you need this subject, and here are the things that fall underneath that.
If space becomes such a constraint that it would help to have a whole extra time period of classes, are you allowed to extend your days? If you, like, say, another 40 minutes or whatever, one class period, if you create space by having more time, as in the college world where you have early and late classes?
I mean, we could approach
I'm
that.
sure a lot of people will be unhappy about it.
Right, I mean,
It's an
we have to
emergency
create a
possibility.
transportation piece and, something like that.
That's harder as a regional school to even contemplate it, of course.
If teachers are teaching more time, then it has
Some
salary.
contractual stuff going on
Right.
too for that.
Right.
And there are classes that happen after school hours that are graded classes now.
Right, we do have teachers on flex schedules to be able to do that.
We have
And that's mostly
band
so that
and
the
music.
kids can fit it into their day.
Correct.
As opposed to the other way around, but.
Would you, if you only had 2 lunch periods, could you add another full block of time to the school for curriculum or not? How would that work?
So-
'Cause that's interesting to me.
I'm not sure I know what you mean when you say add a full block of time. I mean, like, I could make an 8-period day right now, but it means each period would be, so I don't anticipate the day changing, if we're still starting at 7:40, we're still starting at 2:20, so it's the same amount of instructional time. But you can start to do some interesting things with, you can have longer lunch periods then, and you can start to, within your lunch, there are high schools that create longer lunch times, and then within that, create time for teachers to be able to meet and collaborate, and create times for kids to be able to get like tutorial help, because you've got a large group of kids already, in one place, so your supervisory responsibilities are less.
So the benefit of the longer lunch period is obviously kids have more than 15 minutes to try to eat something.
Yep.
But the teachers have an opportunity to collaborate.
You can, depending upon the way you work your master schedule.
Okay.
So it's not like you get rid of 4 lunches and suddenly you do this. I mean, if you had 20 high school principals sitting in this room right now and you asked each one to go around and say what kind of schedule they had at their high school, you might find 2 that had the same schedule in common, but you wouldn't find 3 most likely.
So where I was going with this was, but now it doesn't make sense. If you had 1 lunch period, which you wouldn't, if you had 2, would that buy you enough time to extend the length of classes? But
It creates more opportunities for you to be able to do something like that. I mean, we could do longer periods, fewer periods, but longer periods with the existing lunch schedule. So we could do like a 6-period day with 60-minute periods. Lunch then becomes problematic because it doesn't fit neatly into that. So you can do that with 4 lunches, but it just becomes much more, I mean, every time I start to play around with, maybe we could look at this master schedule, oh, but I've got to make it work around lunch. So
Yeah,
it gives you more flexibility
Lunch
to do
seems
more
to be a
creative stuff.
constant that keeps coming up and up.
Those kids have to eat.
Driver.
Yeah, but you know what's
Yeah.
really almost unfortunate is that the eating component of it is like, yes, they have to eat, they need time to eat, but there's a ripple effect
Yeah.
with all the other things that,
Yeah.
the value of that time.
Right. But if, for example, if you had if our day was slightly longer so that we could have longer classes, you could have, for example, an 8-period schedule where a period was a lunch block and you assign certain courses to be a lunch. So if you created a larger lunch room and had half of your school going to lunch during period 5 and half of your lunch going to period 6, then that longer lunch block could be for the tutorials, it could be for some
An
activity
elective?
periods.
No,
No,
not
because
enough
kids
time.
still have to eat. But, we were just talking earlier in a different meeting where, we need to give kids downtime to just decompress.
I agree with that.
A 20-minute lunch block
That's ridiculous.
is ridiculous.
They're rushed.
Well, yeah,
I
but
mean, you
there's-
could do some club and activity stuff.
You
during
could.
it potentially. It just, it,
isn't it easier to control, isn't it easier to know where everyone is if you only have 2 lunches rather than juggling 4?
yeah, you can make sure that they're going just to the lunches.
Exactly, that's where I'm going with this, instead of wandering.
Instead of going to all of the lunches.
Well, isn't it?
They never do that. Yes, yes, absolutely.
Well, I'm sure they don't go to all the lunches because you don't want to be out in the open, but you know where I'm going with it. It
Yeah.
just gives you a little more control,
Which is what I want.
which is what I want you to have.
Yeah. Having a bigger cafeteria creates more options.
Is there a particular program that we're not offering that you would want to offer because of space? Either because the current space isn't configured perfectly, or we just don't have it because there's no space to put it?
I wouldn't say that I've said, no, we can't do that because we don't have the space. I mean, I have said many times, we will figure out a way to do that. I have no idea where it's going to happen, but we will figure out a way to make it happen somehow. I mean, this is relatively mundane example, but we contracted with an outside counseling agency because we have kids on campus who sometimes will recommend go to an outside counselor, and it's up to parents to make a decision whether to do that or not. But parents trying to figure out when they're going to make that work with their day can sometimes be problematic. So we actually put out an RFP, and now we contract with an outside counselor who will come in. And so they're a private counselor, but they'll be on site during the day. So a parent, if a student has an unscheduled period, study hall period, the parent can contract with this counselor for their child to go meet with that counselor during the day. This is beyond what like our guidance counselors do. This is kind of true ongoing counseling stuff. And so we've been talking about doing this for a while, and we were finally able to do it because we saw a need for it, because it just makes it easier, because we have kids sometimes who we know they need counseling. The parents agree, yeah, they need counseling, but it doesn't happen because of the logistics. But well, now, boom, they can just go to counseling during the school day, so it's great. But I had no idea where we were going to actually make it happen. So we said, yes, we're going to do it, and we'll figure out where later. And so it's become this kind of revolving. Sometimes they're doing it in my office, so I get kicked out of my office. Sometimes they're doing it in the conference room, so we can't schedule us another meeting in the conference room. And it's not a huge headache, but it's just one of those additional kind of paper cuts of.
Well, and
figure out space.
if you have a kid in counseling and they're constantly moving to different places, that's not a good thing either.
No, it's not. No, and it's not as private a space. You're going
Right.
down through the front office to go to your
Right.
counseling session, which is certainly not ideal. So I wouldn't say that I've not put in place any programs, but I mean, like the new social worker intervention position, figuring out where that's going to be. I don't know if it's going to figure it out, but it's not going to be ideal.
Right, right. But in terms of education, for example, computer science, part of the limitation is lab access, right?
Yep.
So that to me is a space driving what we're offering.
We're
That's huge, yeah.
I mean, every time I go to Jody and say, hey, I want to have us run this new class. And she'd look at me and say, we're going to need a computer lab for that, right? And I say, yeah. And she'd say, like, we don't have any computer labs. And I said, we're going to do it anyway. And she would shake her head.
I say, where? And he says, my office. Sorry, you already gave that away.
Yeah.
I would vote for childcare, for a child development program.
Yep,
I
yep.
think that we're of the size of a high school, and as a district, even if we, it'd be a community resource, certainly a resource for teachers. And at most schools where they are in play, they are very successful with a broad range of students.
Just a caveat to keep in mind, MSBA does not support new program. They only support existing program. So if we want a child development
We have to
program
put
to
it in
build it, we
place?
have to have it in place.
So we would have to find a way, oh geez.
Then we get them to slow down to 117.
Exactly. There are reasons why we should do it, absolutely.
I
We
can start
get a
bringing
Lincoln
Jared if
Light
that
on
helps. I'll bring Jared to
117
school
if we
each
have
year.
children other than 8th grade.
So at one point, I remember maybe there is a program going on right now, but someone had mentioned photography.
Digital photography. So we're doing digital photography next year. We can't do real photography because we no longer have a functioning darkroom. But we are going to do digital photography next year. That was one of those ones where Jody came to me and said, where are we going to do this? And I said, we'll figure it out. So I think we have a space that can do it. Enrollment is going to be, we are limiting the number of students who can take it, partially because it's a new course, and so we can only offer so many sections, but also just because of the space that we're going to be able to put it in. So we do have to limit enrollment sometimes based on space.
So the
And
state
this-
won't
and-
pay for anything that you don't have right now, even if it's just like you can't do it because you don't have the space, or is it kind of more elective type things where I guess I don't know what they would.
Right, so they'll pay for, you need this chart?
I got one over here.
They'll pay for the, they'll do the numbers on our enrollment. And if we have 8 science labs, they'll support going to 10 because our enrollment supports going to 10. But if we said, oh, we have this great idea for a new child development center, they're not going to opt for that. That would be one of those things we'd have to, purchase on our own and go through it.
But they wouldn't approve the space for that.
Right, for building.
That would be something that
For
the town
funding.
would
They
have
would
to fund.
share in the funding of that.
So we'd have to fund it at 100%.
Correct.
But at the beginning, did you say that if they're gonna come to us and say, we will support this, and if we say no, then they say, okay, see you later? Are we allowed to take what they offer and then add to it
We can add to it.
of our own money?
We can.
Oh.
Yes.
I did
Oh,
not
yeah.
understand that.
Yeah, no, we can add to it our own money.
100%.
I understand
Right.
that, yes.
What about organizations, like after-school organizations? We just talked about robotics that
Mhm.
we're attempting to sort of bring into the school
Coursework.
day. Not that we're attempting
Right.
to, but space is a limitation for
Oh,
that.
no, we're
Is
running
that
robotics
something
next
that
year.
they?
So I think they would
So
because it's been in our program of studies.
Okay,
Yeah, we've had the program studies.
So I think we would be able to do that.
because that's another one I
Um,
would say is space limited at this.
Yeah.
Yep.
During the school day. at
Right.
least,
Yep, we don't know where we're running that, but we're running it next year.
Right now.
Right,
Alice-
I
in
think-
Alice Closet.
Our courses that combine both the academic and the practical experience, like a robotics, like
Yeah.
digital photography, like computer programming,
The
There's-
woodworking, that seems.
right, that are,
Stuff that needs space or equipment at the same time.
exactly. I
In
mean,
classroom.
digital photography, we're gonna make work, but, I feel for the teacher, this is in a music
It's a very
lab
small
where
little
it's a
space.
small room, and the computers kind of take up all the available space, and this is photography. Shouldn't there be display area, and shouldn't there be places to lay out all your pictures and good lighting? And, so this is a making do kind of thing, that again, I would say, when Perry was talking about quality, I think, outstanding faculty, outstanding kids, outstanding community support, really making do with third-tier facilities. And I don't know, I mean,
Not third world,
Right.
third tier.
and we really are kind of starting to burst at the seams a little
Yeah.
bit, That class will be limited by the size of the room that they're in, and the computers available.
Is it fair to say on any classroom period that above 90% of the 5% of the classes are occupied? Perhaps like 98, there's only 1 or 2 vacant at any moment during the day.
I can tell you.
I guess sort of.
Depends on the period, but there are some periods where there are multiple classrooms vacant. There are some periods where there are no more than 1 or 2 classrooms vacant.
Does your scheduler give you a percentage?
I made a spreadsheet that has them all. I have to end up doing it by hand because then I start moving people around. It's easier to do it on my spreadsheet than in PowerSchool.
Sure.
Sorry.
So, I'm trying to figure out how to frame this question. We keep talking about new things we want to add and needing space for it and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Is there anything or any space that should really be phased out?
Great question.
Because, and this is, it has really annoyed me for the last 15 years or whatever, that when we did the Hale renovation, we have this beautiful home ec area, or whatever, whatever you want to call it these days, that has never been used.
Yeah.
It's a huge space. It was beautifully outfitted. Of course, that stuff is now 15 years old and stuff, but
Still looks brand new because it's never been used.
yeah, because it has
Cleaner than
been.
my stuff.
And it's a lot of space that was very dedicated. I mean, it's not like having 2 extra math rooms that you could teach English in them or something. So you've got all that space that would really have been better used for something else, but in the late 90s, I suppose it was still seemed reasonable that they might have that kind of a program, and yet with everything else that's being added to the programs and everything, there's just no time to do that, even if they had a teacher or something. So is there anything that is sort of similarly that we have and have dedicated space for, that really looking forward, how do we deal, how do we address this space in such a way that if realistically this could sort of fall by the wayside in the next 10 or 15 years,
Yeah.
will we be able to jump on that space without a huge amount of additional aggravation to make it useful?
There aren't many spaces that occur to me. There are no spaces that jump out at me and I say, oh yeah, I totally don't use that space. We've kind of gobbled up space in the building. I would say that not next year, not 2 years from now, but 5 or 6 years from now, computer lab space may not be needed the same way that it is now. As we move towards more and more mobile technology. So I could see some of the computer lab space. For some classes you still need,
CAD and.
you need relatively hardcore software. 5, 6 years from now, we may not need this. We still may have mobile technology. We may have mobile technology that can handle that. But so computer lab space, kind of longer term, I would say we might not need as much. We don't have super high enrollment in our woods and metals classes, but that space that I think is valuable space. If anything, I wouldn't want to lose that space. I think though that's space that would be ripe for redesigning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not repurposing, but redesigning to create classes that might be more. And part of that's a little bit of an equipment issue,
Right.
but.
Is it sort of facilitating better dual or triple use?
And we had that in the science lab renovation. We talked about with our wood room, really trying to create more functional teaching space there and have that be something that could be used more broad by other classes, physics classes and that sort of thing.
But even some of the equipment that you have in your wood shop right now, it's so old, it's so clunky, and if you got an upgraded model, it would take up half of the space.
Exactly.
Plus be more usable. You may see the enrollment in those classes rise.
Exactly. Yep.
If
If you had
I
6
wouldn't wanna.
3D printers
Yes.
in one of those classrooms, you would have a different
Right.
approach to
Right.
tech
You
engineering.
create all new curricular possibilities. Yep.
But that's why I need to understand where we're going with this next, because I know we're having very useful, substantive conversations, but I want to understand what's our outlook for, the next 3 meetings, 4 meetings, 5 meetings? Where do we need to go with all this? And I'm not saying it to push us, I just
No.
want to understand
I mean,
what,
as I math them out in my head, the ideal piece here is to build capacity of this group to understand the very things that Perry's just articulated, and for us to galvanize around why there's a need to do something at the high school. So we'll do the visits, we'll get the sense of what's possible, and, we've already kind of heard from folks who say, I didn't think the high school I thought the high school looked like all of our elementary schools. And build this capacity so that there's an energy then to, I think, in the next meetings will now be maybe in the fall, we need to start talking to broader groups and start articulating what we're seeing as the needs of the high school, and what the possibilities are, how to address them. And I make sure I emphasize plural, because there have to be a plural way to look at this.
would you consider us having our list of 10 to 15 must-haves before we go to see these other schools? Because I don't want to go to see these other schools and then say, oh, we need this, and we need this, and we need, and then we lose what our unique needs
Right,
are.
right.
I mean, we need our unique needs, and then we go see, and it's like, you know what, they had that, maybe we swap this out, maybe we really need what we saw there, but I don't want to lose that core
Mm-hmm.
need that we have as a district that you have, because otherwise it kind of just feels kind of squishy.
If we took this list and had our needs along the side of it, because this list is essentially things that we're interested
That
in,
we've
what our
talked
needs
about,
are.
right.
Right.
So things like, the parking, the drop-off piece.
Exactly.
Would that be a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5
Yeah.
on our list?
Yeah.
We
Right,
took
right.
this and,
I would feel more comfortable when I go talk to people and they ask me questions, because it's gonna come and it should come, and you talk to your group of constituents,
Yep.
and they say, well, why do we have to do this? And then we're all speaking from the same hymnal, because we've all done the work, listened to the experts, the people that are trying to move the curriculum forward, trying to satisfy the needs of the different pockets of students, and we all have the same list of 20 items that are must-haves.
Right.
These are non-negotiable for us, and these are the things maybe are not like to have, but we're not quite sure yet where it fits in. But at least then we have an informed point of view.
Right, right. Well, I think as our next step then is, I can put this as a, I don't know if it's a survey is the right way, but I could put it back out to you as an Excel spreadsheet where you can put in your top priorities, and then we'll meld them together.
And I'd like to know what your top priorities, I want to know what you, Michael, and Perry, Joe, and I keep forgetting your first name. Martina. I want to know what you as a district need, because what I want is less important. It's what you want, what you need in order to do your job.
I don't know that that's less important, because you're a consumer. You know from trying to get your daughter into college and next your son, and so you're a consumer. And I'm a consumer as well. But I think we're all consumers, but we consume it from a different vantage point. So we need your input, because bottom line is, on town meeting floor, oftentimes they disregard us because. For whatever reason, and they listen to the folks who have seen it with an unbiased look at what the issues are.
And I understand that, but we're doing this because we need
Right.
more space to educate students.
Right.
So what are those programs we're going to benefit from? And yeah, and I can speak to it. You guys can speak to it too. But do you want to? You got to tell me too, because I'm thick-skinned. I'm good with that. But if this sounds crazy, I want to hear what the people that we trust our kids to, what do you really need? And we talked about a lot of it, and we'll talk about it again, and then
Right.
Well, I think with getting to some of those points is, at some point, you need to talk to people, and you need to have a story to tell.
Right.
And what's the story? And if the story is, we can't fit, we're trying to put 6 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag, and it's not fitting, and kind of what have you, and we need whatever.
Right.
X amount or more square feet to do it, and however that turns out, but there's no room to do an addition, so it's a new construction, or however that storyline, kind of goes, you need to kind of tell that story. And kind of, but we also need, from the school, what it is that, I don't know what size lab should be. I mean, to the state kind of says they should be this big. Well, so how far are we short? And kind of, the more things you can put to square footage, or, square footage per pupil, that we're this size, but we really need to be this size. So look, we're 30% short as a school. At some point, you need to tell a story.
By the way, I talked to the journalism teacher and about the video idea.
Did you like it?
She liked it, yeah.
She liked it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if we'll be able to get it done before the end of this year, but I think that's on her plan for next year.
I think it would be fantastic.
Oh, yeah, she loved it.
Oh, good. When is the deadline for is it an application, or is it that you have to do for this, I
So,
forget the acronym, for the building what is it called?
MSBA.
Yeah.
So our timeline is this, if we feel we're ready to do that. We will have I believe that we'll have an opportunity to file what they call a statement of interest, an SOI. They'll put them out in roughly in December, and it'll be due back probably in early February. And what that does is it just simply puts us in the queue for being considered to work with MSBA. It means nothing more. It doesn't mean that we have to have a town meeting vote to have a project. But once we get in the queue, the MSBA will expect us to meet certain milestones, and that will the first milestone will be something called feasibility, which we'll then have to raise money to pay for that, which means at that point we have to hire an architect and we have to hire a project manager. So,
Is feasibility the concept side of things as opposed, and
starts to
then
build the concept.
the
side.
next step after that is actual plans, and then actually putting out the plans to contract to build?
Correct.
Are there more?
No, that's it.
than that?
So the feasibility, we've done that somewhat we've done pieces of that. Somebody's phone?
That's not me.
It's not me.
That's me.
You don't know your ringtone?
No, it's in the phone.
So
Okay, I was about to say, isn't it?
the feasibility phase, the architect will work with us to make our story more crisp, and really help us by asking better questions than maybe I am, to get us to tell the story that exists. But they'll take a lot of what we're doing right now and they'll fold that into the feasibility study.
Do you need permission, or do you need a vote from the school committee or someone to start this process, to do the statement
Yes.
of interest and to
Right.
hire an architect and all that?
The statement of interest absolutely has to have a vote of the school committee. Because we're in 3 towns, all 3 towns need to know we're going in that direction. So we'd have to communicate that with our boards of selectmen, and talk with their capital planning committees to make sure that they're well aware that, we've begun rolling in that direction.
And once we get the ball rolling, is it just no breaks, we're just going? Or at any
Oh.
time, can you say like, oh, well, we ran out of money, or the town's decided?
We can put the brakes on
or-
it anytime we want to. Anytime we want to. Usually what does put the brakes on it is that boards of selectmen don't want to put it on their warrant for any step, where we need money, the feasibility study, or...
And then do we lose our spot in line? We have to go back to the end of the line, or?
So, what MSBA will say is they'll give you chances. So they'll give you some time, especially if they are very supportive of the project. I mean, yes, they'll vote you in and they support it that way, but if they know you have a big project, they worked with us for, 3 votes in Stowe to get it through. So they were with us for quite a while, roughly 5 years before we finished. So about 3 years to get it to a final vote that passed. So, they'll work with you, but at some point they'll say, your town's not ready.
So the statement of interest, you kind of general support, and the feasibility study is the next step, but that's a non-reimbursed step. That's at the
Correct.
district's cost, which
Correct.
then essentially becomes going to the 3 towns saying, we want to have some amount of funding to kind of go do this
Right.
feasibility study.
Right.
And that would be kind of the first outlay of any money from the towns would be the feasibility study,
Right.
basically.
Correct.
And I'm assuming we're leaning towards or heading in the direction of doing this in December, right? Of putting out a statement of interest?
I think we could be ready for December. But
Because if
I
we
will-
don't, then we have to wait another
we have to
calendar
work
year.
another calendar year.
Yeah,
Because there's no guarantee that they'll vote us in.
right.
So the statement of interest simply gets us on the table. If they don't vote you in, you're gonna wait the next calendar year anyway.
So that's not this committee's job to vote if we're gonna do a statement of interest, that's the school committee's vote?
Right.
Okay.
We'll recommend. So this body will have a sense of the committee to do the vote.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
I know we talked about a construction schedule of typically a school year and 2 summers. If everything kind of went ideal, I don't know what the timing of some of that stuff is, even if you kind of submitted something in December, got your stuff in for February, your application for February, took all those steps, like, the design and bonding and everything went super smooth, everything got voted in by all of that. Like, what kind of time period is just even the process
Right.
of all that stuff?
So, let me walk you through that. So let's say we had a statement of interest in January 2015. Let's say we went to annual town meeting in May of 15, and they approved our feasibility study money. We would be probably complete with that by roughly January or February of 2016. We could probably have a project ready to go to annual town meeting May of 2016. If it were approved at that point, we would hit the ground running in June, when school closed. That's probably a little tight because we have to go out for contract, so probably September-ish.
That's what I was kind of wondering,
Yeah.
it kind of gets you off. I was
Yeah.
just curious of even how quickly it could happen, whether it's like, well, this takes you 3 years plus 2 years.
Right, I mean,
How many
it
years
also
you
too
have.
would depend on what we were doing for phasing, because obviously we have to go to school while we were doing something. So it would really depend on, if we had to bring modular units on site to use part of the school and in modulars, and then either renovate or tear down part of the school and so forth. So, all of the phase-in schedules where you'd probably get bogged down a bit, because even if we were to go May 2016 for a vote for an actual project, between getting the contracts out and bid on and returned and then starting, it might, and then the design of the phase-in, it could be a while before things, get going, that you start actual construction.
So it would be pretty easy to be in a 2 or 3 year window
Yeah.
for a design piece, and then a year and a half window for construction, or a year plus, whatever
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah, probably 2, yeah.
Yeah.
So even if May 16 was our launch year, we're not setting foot in a brand new renovated space until fall 2020 or 21.
Wow.
21?
Either fall 20 or fall 21.
You gonna still be with us?
Not sure.
I mean, it just takes a while.
You can leave
But I think
at
that
20.
needs to become part of the story too, that it's like, it's not tomorrow, it's, by the time this happens, it's, 5 years have gone by and, kind of, the building will be 5 years older and, kind of all that stuff.
Right.
Is there a place in the current structure of school committee where there's actually a kind of review of the, let's say, the story or the curriculum or the school's mission, not mission, but program in a way that's, everyone can see it and say, hey, this is a great priority, we should do more of this, we should do less of this, as distinct from, say, the piecemeal, next year we're going to do this thing
Right.
which the state requires us
Mm-hmm.
to do. This thing next year, maybe we're going to try for that. Is there kind of a program review process besides, making your schedule happen or the kids signing up or?
So it's not all in one place.
So part of that saying this is the story that needs to get told to
Right.
the people at large in the
Right.
persuasive sense. This is why the school needs
Right.
X.
It's not all in one place, so it is, for that, I think, but we have the pieces. We will have an ES site review. We have our program of studies, which we then can report out where essentially we can't run courses or we can run courses because of space. So we have those two pieces that will be driving factors, I think, in telling the story. As major contributors.
And is it possible that there could be or should be a process that is perhaps larger than the administration making things happen, like whether it's, getting the school committee to be presented, hey, this is where we're going, this is where we've been, kind of thing? Is that conceivable or sensible, or is
Well,
it?
we're going to inform the school committee, yes.
In the sense of looking at the program, say, this is the story about why we need a school,
Yeah.
but also, by the way, this story is something we should work on as a whole on a regular basis, dear authorizing school committee or whatever.
Well, the school committee has already authorized this task force.
Right. But I'm just meaning, talking about the program as a whole at the school committee level or perhaps even beyond it. I'm perhaps out of ignorance, I'm saying I don't
Yeah.
feel like there's a place for that to occur, and therefore that story is not visible to people of the towns, except for perhaps parents that got kids at the high school.
Oh, so are you, I'm gonna jump in if you're,
Okay.
because I didn't understand where you were going at the beginning with it. I wasn't getting it.
And part
Are
of,
you saying then that there needs to be a concerted approach to working with our advisory committees and our selectmen committees within our respective towns, as well as other constituents in the 3 towns, in order to help everyone understand what it is we're doing?
yeah, and I'm also saying a precursor to that
Right.
is having this unified at the school committee level, yes, this is where we really want to go and we're behind it kind of
Yes.
discussion.
So, yes, so this group is going to essentially write a position paper that is going to articulate the needs, not the solutions, but the needs.
Yeah.
The school committee will
Say yes,
vote
no.
yes or no,
blah, blah, blah.
and that'll be the
Did you know
kickoff.
that?
You're right.
I'm what?
You're directing.
I'm feeling like I know, I'm trying to.
And so, that's got to happen. And that is going to be our story to be told to the boards of selectmen, the FinComs, and the advisories and capital committees and so forth. So that, in essence, will be a place where we put all of the information into one place.
I think I know where you're going with
So
this, and
what
I
I'm-
agree with you.
So what I'm saying is that the
Yep.
process of dealing with the building requires it, but for better than that, actually, the whole school system needs to have this done regularly, kind of like the New England school accreditation process, that you get a kind of consensus that people understand because it's visible and it's done, even though it's a lot of work. And maybe it turns out only 1% pay attention to what you produce as a consequence, but at least you've built that consensus where everyone knows
Well, you
where
build the
you're headed
consensus, but you also,
internally.
Right.
people have ownership in it if you bring them along. Like, if we, I mean, it's only prudent to include conversations with the advisory people and build that now, because they're gonna have questions that we don't necessarily have, but
Right.
we need to answer as we go along.
Right.
And we want there to be a partnership on it, but even as far as letting people know where we are at each stage through, community outlets.
Yep.
This is, and if we do this in a staged approach, which not just those big chunks, but even within that, it's like over the next 5 phases of this stage of the game,
Right.
we're gonna do these 5 things and report out on them,
Yep.
then people feel like they have a sense of ownership in it as well.
And that was, partly the design of this committee, so that those memberships are here. But next fall, we're going to be doing some roadshows, certainly I am. I mean, to those groups, we'll have Tri-Town, which already brings those folks together in one place, where we'll be talking about it. And, that's why these are being televised, so that the public can see them and hear the conversations that are taking place.
Part of why I'm saying that is, talking to my own town's capital planning committee, I know the worst critics, when they are persuaded that something's necessary, they are your advocates.
Absolutely.
And they're your best critics, because they are the people who are able to say, yes, we think this is right.
Right.
And so therefore, the program, is driving all of our need and making that as visible as possible.
Right.
And also, letting it be critiqued. No, we don't want to ever do X, whatever X is.
Yeah.
Let's stop doing that.
Right.
Talk to your school committee member or whatever.
Right.
Um,
So, to-dos. I will start calling folks to see if we can arrange some visits. I'm going to put a document out to all of you to sort of rank your priorities essentially on this list, and we'll put that together. I don't think we'll be able to meet between now and then, so we'll need to do a little bit of a collaborative exercise to make sure that we know what we're asking when we go to do the visits. I'll get the dates, and then if you can join us. If you can't, that's it.
When you give us the list, can you give us your rank order?
It'll be
first?
it'll be a spreadsheet. I couldn't do it on Google, so you can just everybody see it
Oh,
together. Because we don't all have Google.
We can't share a
We
site.
can't share a site. But yeah, we can.
because I'll have my opinions, but I want to know what you want.
Sure. Yeah, we can get it done.
Right?
Yeah.
Heather, right? You with
Yes,
me, right?
I am, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it.
But I want everybody to be independent. I don't want us to be driving the bus. I want to be on the bus.
No, but we need to be informed by what.
Maybe in the
you-
front. I get the first.
What'd you say?
I want to be in the front of the bus.
Oh, honey, you are in the front of the bus.
Not in front of.
No, I didn't say that. No, I did not say that. In the front of. You're
Sorry.
sick.
It's late. I'm dead.
So I will, actually, I wrote down, what Perry said, and I'll send this around to you right now. And I fleshed it out a little bit more, and I think we're starting to get at the story about what we talked about quality of teaching and learning space, the quantity of space, and the limited programs as a result of the space. I think those are 3 good tenets of our story to be told. So, I'll email this out to you right now.
Let me tell you my email address, and add me to your list.
Oh, you're not on there?
I'm not
You
on
want to
this one, I
televise
think.
that?
You can just hand it to me. How's that?
Now that everyone knows your ringtone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Put you right in there. Anything else? You know what else I'll do? Ooh, I don't know if I will be able to do this though. Okay. I'll put kind of a timeline on our website, and I'll send that out to you also, so that you can see kind of what we just talked about, to kind of get a sense of what could be. Is this case sensitive?
So
No.
to David's point though, with, and maybe that comes in the next iteration of this, the space constraints the recommendation for optimal space or minimum space needs, once we get that list of, these are the programmatic areas, thank you for that. I'm not articulating this well because it's late and I've had a long day. But if we could start to identify where we lack space, I think that point is really well taken. These are the programs we need that we don't have for now and 10 years from now. And based on these needs, this is what the translation is in space. I think that's
There's a spreadsheet where you can, MSBA has a spreadsheet where you can fill it all in and it'll show you like side by side.
excellent. Because that's one of the bigger questions that we're gonna have to answer, which is, who says you need X number of feet? Where'd you pull that number from? And if there's a guideline there, then
I can work with Bill Cleary on putting that together and figuring out what
That's-
our
that
current
was
square
great.
footage and all that stuff.
you brought
Yeah.
that up twice.
I like numbers.
It's
We all do.
it's a good exercise to go through.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Okay, good meeting. Anything else?
2 minor
Yeah.
things. Everything else has been major. But flipping through my notes while you were talking, 2 other areas that I had written down before that I
Okay.
did not see in here was parking lot lighting and like room in the halls for like passing time, just the amount of how wide a hall is for
Okay.
students when they're during passing time. It was in my notes.
The
Dogs
lighting
with
is
cars.
good.
Right, and
Right.
the comfort in the hallways for the population. And,
It's like market basket on a Saturday, right?
Michael, we had talked about potentially visiting this spring. Is there a better day than others? Like for me, Mondays tend to be trickier. How will you?
I was going to shoot for Wednesdays,
Okay.
only because that's what we've been meeting on Wednesdays.
Oh, we're
We're not
The
doing it
visits.
in the fall.
My planning board meetings are on Wednesdays, except for the last Wednesday of the month, so I might not be able to make them. So that's fine for me to not make them, for other people to be able to make stuff. Mondays and Fridays are pretty good for me.
Okay. Well, Fridays might be tough.
Friday at 6 o'clock, you're willing to spend your happy hour with these people.
Come on, Lorraine, you got something better scheduled.
I have so much better stuff to do.
Thursdays are pretty good for me, usually too.
All right, I'll look for Wednesdays or Thursdays. Is Thursdays tougher? stuff for Thursdays?
Usually with any kind of notice, I just have to get childcare coverage. so-
Okay. Well, I think that this gets done. All right. We'll give it a shot. All right, thank you.
Thank you.